All right, hello and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate of Things. I am joined today by Charles Johnson, who is the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services California Realty Thousand Oaks branch manager. Welcome, Charles. How are you?
I'm good. And Jonathan, you can call me Chip, which everybody does. So um, that's, yeah, that's fine. Charles is good. My mom calls me that, but everybody else calls me Chip. So,
Well, if that's the case, then let me do something real quick. Let's see. Can you see this on your screen? We'll go Chip and save. There.
oh, beautiful. Perfect.
Chip Johnson. Um, All right. Well, let's start off with just kind of learning a little bit about you and who you are, what you do. Um, obviously, you're the branch manager at the Thousand Oaks office. How long have you been doing that?
So I've been a branch manager for Berkshire Hathaway for about 8 years now in the Thousand Oaks office.
Yep. And you've been in real estate for longer than 8 years.
Oh, yeah. So I got my license in 1989, actually, but was a full-time real estate, I'm sorry, full-time insurance broker owner. So did that for quite a few years, but also, did some deals for myself and family with the real estate license. Didn't really get into full-time real estate until about 2001, 2002.
Nice. Very cool. All right. All right. And how do you like it?
I love it. I love it a lot. So it quite sales sales jobs are sales jobs, but real estate is such um, an interesting way to make a living and also interesting thing to do. It's you're helping somebody with probably one of the largest purchase of their life. So it's a very emotional purchase for them, and it's very rewarding for me because you're truly helping somebody do something that they wanted to do probably for a long time. So it's very fun.
It's weird. I tend to feel like a sense of intimacy, which is a really weird thing to say, but it's true. Like you end up bonding with these people in a way that's kind of special and unique, and they become lifelong friends.
Yeah, I mean, if you're honestly, if you're doing it right, that's generally what happens. Because yeah, we want to help people, and the only way to help someone is to really get to know them, to see what they really want to do. So yeah, you end up finding details about their lives, and they find out details about your lives, which is and that you share just like you would with close friends. So yeah, it's not only rewarding, it's fun, and yeah, you keep friends for long period of time, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. Well, when you were a little boy, which was probably like what 1,000 years ago. Um,
I was going to say like 10 minutes ago, but okay, you go with a
okay.
thousand.
What did you, if you weren't going to do real estate and sales, what would you have done? Like, what's something else that you would have done?
So I always actually wanted to be, and I don't know, the attorneys out there will probably say that would be a good profession. I always wanted to be a lawyer. So
Oh, wow. Yeah. I could see that in you. You're very kind of like even keeled based. You have very logical arguments that take place in your head constantly. That's what I've noticed.
well, and sometimes they spill out onto others, and sometimes I actually, when we're talking, as you know, because we've talked before, when we're dealing with a problem, it's kind of a give and a take, and so you'll go, okay, well, we could go this way, we could go this way, and so yeah, my approach is basically a logical, like you say, even keeled approach.
Right.
Be unemotional in the deals because especially real estate is such a highly emotional deal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I notice you do that a lot where you kind of balance scales constantly, which is a
So
cool trait. I like that a lot. Um, all right. Well, we're here to talk about something kind of unique and current. And, uh, I'm really glad to have you on to shed light on this situation because I feel like it's something that we need to be talking about. It's something that you know a lot about. And I think you're going to have really good insight and opinions on the entire matter. And the topic that we're going to be talking about today is this lawsuit that has gone against the National Association of Realtors, NAR. So if I would say a lot of people have maybe heard a few sound bites about it, maybe read an article or two, but don't really know exactly what this lawsuit is about. So why don't we take it from the beginning, from the root, and just what's happening, what's going on, what is this lawsuit?
Yeah. So the basis of the lawsuit, I mean, it really boils down to it's pretty simple. Is it's NAR has a clear cooperation policy that basically states that sellers have to offer commission to a buyer's brokerage, through the contracts. It doesn't state an amount, but it does state that it has to be offered. Now, this particular lawsuit we're talking about, Stitzer Burnett, was based in Missouri, so it's a very limited area that it was based in. Now, there is another one called Morel, which has a larger area, but the basis of all of these lawsuits is that sellers are basically saying that because of the NAR rule, there's a conspiracy, if you will, or collusion between agents to keep the real estate commissions at a certain level, and pay, basically pay for the sellers paying for the buyer's broker, which is true in a sense. I mean, that is the way that the way that the deals are set up. So basically what they're saying is, it shouldn't be that way. It should be open. And the reason that the real estate industry has done this is because it keeps an open and fair, I guess, business, if you will, because it provides a way for selling agents to get paid, and listing agents. So the listing agent technically is getting paid all of the commission and then shares their commission with the buyer's agent. So technically, yes, the seller is paying a commission to the buyer's agent or to the selling agent. You're not really paying the buyer's agent; the selling agent's paying the buyer's agent. So,
Right.
but indirectly, it comes through. So, sellers are saying, well, we've now paid double. We paid ours and we paid the other person. Why should we do that? So that's that's really the just of it. There's a couple other things, minor things that go along with it, but that's really the just of the argument, and that's the just of the argument with all of the lawsuits now that are coming out, and there's more now, because the industry did lose in the original trial. Now the judge hasn't given any his ruling on what the actual losses or damages are going to be, and of course this is going to be appealed by the NAR and by the four companies that lost in the lawsuit. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
it really is ongoing.
Yeah. So let's take it a step back and try and dumb it down, just because it can get so like technical. Um,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people, and we talk about this, a lot of people don't even know how agents get paid. And I mean, this literally just happened. My buyers called me up and they go, "Hey, we're looking at the line item for our costs. We don't see anything for you. How are you getting paid?" And
Right.
I had to inform them on how this works. So if I am going to sell my home and I'm going to use you as my agent, which I would never do, by the way. Um,
Well, that's because you're not going to sell your home, Jonathan. You're going to live there forever.
there
Otherwise,
you
you would definitely lose me.
go. And I was going to sell my home. Um, uh, how would we figure out the commission that's going to go to you and the buyer's agent? How does that work?
So the way it works, and I just to kind of take a little step back, also, the real estate industry as a whole and real estate agents definitely mostly do not explain this to their clients in any reasonable shape or form. I mean, it's a cursory glance at all, especially buyers. Buyers have, for the most part, have no idea, like you just said, how their agent's getting paid. They have none whatsoever, which is that's frankly that's our fault. That's our
Sure.
fault that we've done this. But bottom line, that's the way it's been, which is a big emphasis, or a big reason why we have this lawsuit, because nobody knows, really people don't understand how it works. So
Right.
if we're talking to a seller, So California is a little bit different from what I understand. I don't know Missouri's paperwork rules and their laws. California is extremely regulated,
Right.
way more regulated than a lot of the other states. So our paperwork and our contracts, listing contracts, stayed on there in bold type. Real estate commissions are not set by law. They're not set by anybody. They're negotiable.
Right.
And right in the contract, it says, we're going to pay X number of dollars to commission to our agent, and then that agent is then going to pay X number of percentage to the selling agent. So it's laid out in there. So the conversation that I would have with my seller would be just that: is to how we come to the reason why we charge what we charge, and basically show them your value, as a listing agent. So that's the conversation you would have, as to the services that you're going to provide. And that's another thing that a lot of agents are not very good at either, is communicating their value
Right.
uh, to sellers and buyers, and especially buyers. People just kind of get buyers and they just do what they do, but there's really not a lot of discussion as to really what you're doing, um, behind the scenes. Because I know we've talked about this. You've heard me say this is one of my pet peeves. Is people think that we're getting paid, as a realtor, when we get paid for their deal, we're getting paid just for that deal. But as a commission based, we're not getting a salary. We only get paid when something closes. So I could show buyers. I think my record on showing houses to a buyer without a deal, I believe, is in the 30s, 38, 39, something like that. Showed them
Oh, I got
39
you beat.
houses. Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah.
They're about 39 houses. And the record for writing offers, I wrote the highest number of offers I wrote on a buyer before they actually got a house was 29. So I wrote 29 offers over the course of about 4 months, until they got a property. And so for all of that work, if that buyer didn't get that property and we didn't close escrow, I would get paid for none of it. And so that's the way that the real estate industry works. That you're getting paid to close when you close a deal, but you don't get paid for any of the rest of it. We don't get a salary. The broker doesn't pay us, a salary. And conversely, the agents get the bulk of the commission, which is correct, which is fair. And so, but you're spreading that out, and well, we can go into there's a bunch of reasons why, a bunch of reasons why, and things that commission I think is fair, because you have to be an expert on so many different things if you're going to truly be a professional and help your clients out. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and there's all types of agents out there, and unfortunately, there are a number of agents that, I would say are not very professional and are just in it for the money, and just this is an easy way to get an easy place to get a license. You just get a state license, and all of a sudden you're a realtor. Unfortunately, that's kind of the way it works, but that doesn't mean you have the ethics and you have the knowledge to do what you do. So the real professionals, like Jonathan, frankly, like yourself and a lot of the other people we work with, you know, seriously are true professionals, and
Right.
care about what we do, want to know what the ins and outs are of real estate, and the area, and so that way we can help somebody. Other than that, you're just an order taker, and it's really, you're really doing nothing. So
Well, and I think some of the baseline concepts, for everyone to hear and to understand is that you could sell your home by yourself. That happens. There are websites for salebyowner.com. And
yep.
there's nothing stopping an individual from doing that. But the transaction, like you said before, it's probably the most expensive transaction. I mean, it's not like we're selling iPhones here or computers. We're selling homes that could be upwards of, I mean, they could be millions of dollars. And that transaction has a whole lot of contract. I mean, the paperwork just by itself is massive. And then understanding all of the intricacies on how to get this deal, this transaction to run smoothly through escrow and title and disclosures and everything to not trip up some kind of a lawsuit or put a whole lot of liability on either party. is like it's a really heavy, um, pressure filled time. And so, that's why that I mean, real estate agents need to be paid something. And it then becomes, well, what is something? And is that something fair? Is it too much? Is it too little? Or is it just right? And the next concept is that there is no regulation. There are no set rules on like how much a real estate agent is going to be paid. Now, there is kind of a precedent. There is a kind of general understanding that it's going to be based off of the price of the home, right? So it's not an actual dollar figure, although it could be. And that it's usually a percentage, and that percentage is usually somewhere between, 4 to 6%. And you see people that do it for less sometimes, right? And it can be for more, but a general rule of thumb is that it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 6%. Would you agree?
I would actually, yeah, 4 to 6% is a good number, and whether that's fair or not, really that's the whole crux of all of the lawsuits is, so what's fair or not. If the value that we bring is communicated correctly, and you not only communicate, you actually do what you say you're going to do, then the value is there. I definitely feel the value is there for all of the things that you just listed. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. When we start a deal, 30 years ago, it was a 2-page contract. Well, just the residential purchase agreement, the contract to buy a house, just that one piece of paper is what, 16 pages now, and
Right.
that's nothing. That when you end a file, you're probably getting close to 500 pages of documents or more,
Super
depending
thick.
on the house.
Right.
But and each one of those things is a mini contract in itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, so as a realtor, you're as close to an attorney as you can get without actually being one, because you're writing contracts for millions and millions of dollars, and someone's hopes and dreams ride on what you do. So
Right.
it's highly stressful. It's technical, and you want to do it right for sure. Because if you don't, it causes huge problems for you and most definitely your clients, which is the whole point of hiring a professional to do the work,
Right.
right? And so I know in there is, should it be regulated? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fan of regulation specifically, and so to have someone mandate and say, okay, here's how much it would cost, because Jonathan, as you know, you've worked with realtors, and there are some realtors that do 500 million things and go over and above, which you actually do, go over and above what someone may expect, or even what normal realtors do. And there's others that do none of that.
Right.
They basically do the minimum. They'll throw a house on the MLS and try to collect offers. So there's a huge difference between and a huge difference between what you and I do and what a lot of other realtors do. And there's also a huge difference on what our clients want,
Right.
and what they need. And some of the time, a lot of the time, they don't actually know what they need, because you know, most people don't buy and sell homes, like a cell phone even, or a car. I mean, you're buying one house or two houses maybe in your lifetime.
Right.
Um, so it's a totally foreign
Right.
thing when you're buying a house. So you don't actually know what you don't know until you get into the deal. And so that's our job. That's our job, is to be able to explain that. But again, people, like you said, you can go online and you can sell your house yourself. You can go find a deal and you can buy a house yourself. There's ways that you can do that. You're not protecting yourself. You're not getting the representation that I think is valuable, but you can certainly do it.
Right. Right. All right. So let's try and drive back towards this lawsuit. Okay. So we're talking between 4 and 6% is kind of standard, normal right now. And it's important to note that that doesn't mean that you know that 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 4 to 6% is then being split. As it kind of stands, the standard practice right now is the listing agent, which would be you in this case. Let's say we negotiate 5%. Now you're going to take that 5% and you're going to, in our contract, actually specify how much you're going to give or offer to the buyers, which we call sales agents, but the buyer's agents to say, hey, this is how much is being offered up on your end. So if it's 5% total, it's usually going to work out to be like two and a half, two and a half,
Right.
right? Now it
Yep.
doesn't have to be, and I know people that will charge six and keep four and offer two. And you can it's all in negotiation, like you said. There are people that will charge four, keep one and a half for themselves, and offer two and a half out, or two and two, whatever it is, right? And so then it becomes kind of about, well, if this is all a big negotiation, that's kind of fair. So then why are sellers having such a hard time in Missouri and creating a lawsuit and suing the National Association of Realtors and these companies for something that's clearly stated in a contract?
Well, so a big part of that, Jonathan, is as realtors, we don't actually explain it very well. Definitely not to, again, like we talked about, we don't explain it very well. It's not very transparent,
Yeah,
for sure. It hasn't been. I don't see any reason why the commission rate shouldn't be published, shouldn't be put out there, so everybody knows what's going on. It's our job to explain why we get paid what we get paid. It's not the consumer's job to know. It's our
sure.
job to explain it to them, and then the reason we get 4%, 5%, or 2.5%, or however we split it, that's a different conversation when you're talking to, like you split it, you have a 6%, you keep four and you pay two, or you keep 3.5 and you pay 2.5. It depends on what you're working out with your sellers and the services that you provide. I mean, you could be staging the house for them. And so there's so many different variables we can't. I mean, we don't have time to go over them here.
Right.
But as a realtor, those are things that you need to know, and you need to be able to articulate and communicate to your clients.
Well, and little side note, I mean, usually the ones that will charge 4% and offer two and a half and keep one and a half from themselves, their business model is completely different than a full service brokerage. And so
Yeah,
it's like, well, okay, you get what you pay for. And
yeah,
if you want to have a discount broker, then you're going to expect some discount service. And maybe that's not a big deal to you, but then there's a counter argument to that, which is that if you're going with a discount service agent, are you going to get the most money in terms of the offers that are coming in? Because is it going to be marketed properly? Are you going to be able to negotiate the terms and conditions and the best price? Or is this agent, just kind of taking in as much business as they possibly can with a discounted rate and not going to be paying that much attention to your home? So that's one of the conversations that I think is had or should be had about this whole thing. And then but again, let me drive this back to the lawsuit. So
lots.
essentially, sellers are going, hey, wait a minute, you're charging me 5%, but I'm paying 2.5% to the buyer's agent. Why am I on the hook to pay them? And what you're saying is, well, it's just not really transparent enough that, well, of course, the buyer's agent needs to make money. And so, really, I'm charging you 5% for what I'm doing, but to help me, I'm going to incentivize the buyer's agents with 2.5% to bring their buyers to come to your home. If I don't do that, no buyers are going to come to your home.
Correct. Yes, and so that's been the way it's been. It's buyers were never able to see, homes, on the internet before, and so
Yep.
that's why the system that we have, kind of morphed into how it's morphed. And now you can see, buyers can see everything that a realtor can see.
Right.
They may not know all the details, but they can say, "Oh, this house is for sale," possibly, right? Because some of the services don't keep track, are not as up to date. But realistically, you can see things that are on the market where you could never see them before.
Right.
There are things, as you know, Jonathan, there are things that we have in-house that agents have, they have a deal with, so there are some that are not on the market, that are not in the internet, but for the most part, people can see them. So it's less important now, to have it not be transparent, or to say, the buyers wouldn't be able to see that.
Right.
It is, however, like you said, it's an incentive. It's an incentive to get buyers and buyers agents, into the house. Because the one thing we haven't talked about is the way our system is set up. And this is not a realtor system. This is the way the lending system is set up. Buyers cannot include the payment of the a realtor fee in their loan. So they would have to come out of pocket directly to whatever broker or whatever deal they make. So not only do they have to pay the down payment for the house, closing costs for the house, now on top of the closing costs, they have to pay whatever fee is negotiated. If that's what you do, if you don't, if they're paying directly, and that none of that can be put into the loan. So it could come to a problem. Now, I do want to let me take it back to the lawsuit. This
Yeah.
lawsuit is very, very narrow uh, at this point. It is only in Missouri, and it's only for four of the MLSs. So now, will it have an impact? Has it had an impact? Yes. A lot of us in the real estate business are talking about it. So it's definitely has an impact. We know what's going on, and there is the Morel lawsuit that's already close to. That's probably going to go to actually this month. I think this month or next month is going to probably go to trial. But there have now been a lot of other lawsuits filed with the same premise. So at some point or another, these things are going to get filtered out. Um, and so to really work as a realtor, to work through this, it's really important to know what's going on, but also to know what's going on in your area. The biggest thing to me is to let your customers know, to let your people know, how it works, and the reason for the way it gets paid. We're technically, California is not affected by this lawsuit at this point. I mean, there's nothing that's changing because of it. But there's some subtle changes coming. As realtors, as a brokerage, as a person representing our brokerage and talking to agents such as yourself, I've recommended buyer representation agreements forever. So it's important now because everything's spelled out for the buyer. Here's how much you're paying me, and you can talk about it any way you want. I mean, the buyer is getting it for free because the seller's paying it. Well, not really. The purchase price of the house is the purchase price of the house. So you're paying for that. Part of that purchase price is going to pay your broker. So the buyer's paying for it. The
Right.
seller's paying, right? And so that it's not free. It's not free to either party.
Right.
It's just the way it's done. It kind of feels like for the buyer it's free because it's technically not coming out of their pocket. But if you actually look at it correctly, it really is.
Right. Well, and it's not coming out of their pocket on purpose. And that's the way that this whole thing has kind of been structured for decades and decades and decades. And like you said, when a buyer goes to purchase a home, they're going to have to shell out a lot of money up front. Like you said, there's a down payment, there's closing costs, there's prepaids. That right there is a huge chunk of money. And so you can't expect a buyer to pay more money to pay for their representation, which is the buyer's agent. Now, so that's why the system has been created where it's going to come from the net proceeds of the sale, right? Which is kind of on the seller's side, so to speak. Um, but if you do away with that, if the seller comes out and says, "Hey, I'm suing you because you charged me 5% and you took 2.5% and you gave it to them," I don't want to pay that. I'm only going to pay 2.5%. Well, then the next rational question is, okay, well then how are they going to get paid? How is the buyer's agent going to get paid? And the seller right now is saying, not my problem, which is
Right.
ironic because if you're going to sell a home, you're going to end up having to buy a home. And so if you're not willing to then shell out that money up front to pay for your agent, then how do you expect that agent to get paid? And so then the next rational thing is, well, then maybe there should be no buyer's agents. And since we have Zillow and all of these online platforms where I can go in as a consumer, see homes that I want to buy, and I don't need a buyer's agent, I guess what I go to the listing agent.
Well, so when you say you don't need a buyer's agent, that's an interesting conversation. So if you don't need a buyer's agent, so it's the finding the house is really the smallest part of buying the house.
Sure.
It's getting through escrow. It's doing the paperwork, making sure that you, as the buyer, are getting the information that's actually required by state civil code that the seller is supposed to give you. If you're going in as a buyer, and you're buying, this is your first house you bought, or this is the second house you bought, and the last one you bought was 10, 15 years ago. I guarantee you, 10, 15 years ago, the laws were different, right? So there, because we're in California, we're regulated like crazy, which for consumers, it's awesome. But now sellers can get away with a lot if you have no idea what you're looking at or what you need or what you're required to get. That's the problem. So that's the representation that you're getting. You also don't know really as a buyer, you don't know what the market is. You don't know what is
Right.
going. You have no idea. As a professional real estate agent, that is our job. That's our
Right.
job, is to know the market, not only nationally, but more important, locally. Because frankly, when you're buying a house, I don't care what the house in Washington, D.C. costs. It makes no difference to me. I care about what the house I'm buying costs and what the neighborhood does. And so that's why it's so important to have representation from someone who knows the business. If it was just finding a house, yeah, you're right, Jonathan. It'd be no problem, right? Go on Zillow, go on Redfin, go on Realtor.com. There's 100 sites you could go on, find a house, and just give them the money and buy it. It's not that easy, as you
Of
as you
course.
know.
Well, and
But
and and so we live in a world where you can go on Amazon and click a button and it shows up at your door. And so I think a lot of the thought process is, well, I could just buy the home. But there is a whole lot more to it than just let me click a button and buy this home. There are negotiations, there are contingency periods, there are so many different things that you have to protect yourself with as a buyer. So that, I mean, within 3 days of getting an offer accepted, you have to go and give usually 3%, which is a ton of money, and put that in escrow. And that money is going to sit there. And that money at some point is going to become up for grabs for the seller. Like the seller at some point can go, hey, I deserve that money now. That money belongs to me, even though you haven't bought the house. And if you kick out on the deal, that's fine, but I'm keeping this money. And we're talking about like 20, 30, $40,000 more, depending on the price of the home. And if you don't, as a buyer, know what the rights are and how to navigate that process, well, there you go right there. But
right.
here, Chip, I have a question for you. All right, so I, as the buyer, I need representation. Well, can I just use you as the listing agent as my representation?
You certainly can. That's totally up to you. Now, if you do, you have to realize the relationship between the listing agent and the seller has been set, and they are, I don't want to say in cahoots, but they are in lockstep with what they are trying to achieve with the purchase price of the house and with everything else. And so the selling agent the listing agent knows intimately or should know what the seller wants and how they want to go about it. Now, so you as the buyer, if you're gonna and you come and you say, okay, the listing agent can represent me. Now, it's legal in California to have dual agency,
Right.
you
It's
know,
called double ending.
and sometimes it works out, yeah, so represent both sides. But as a buyer, if I'm looking at it, I want to have my own representation.
Of
I want to have
course.
somebody in my corner that's going to negotiate for me, that's going to know the area and tell me what the value, the prices of houses are, and what some of the. I mean, there's downsides to neighborhoods. Is there neighborhood nuisances? Is there an airport that may not even be close, but it's in a flight path? I mean, there's just so many different variables that a professional agent knows that the listing agent may or may not. Some of it's not actually disclosable, but it's just little things that they would impart to you, and they're truly. I mean, it's hard to be a dual agent. They have a relationship with the seller. You're new, so their allegiance, while they are going to represent both sides, they're truly the allegiance, in my opinion, is to the seller.
It
And
can't be 50-50. It's like, I mean, maybe 51-49 if that agent is exceptional. But,
yeah,
really it's never going to be 50-50 even because like you said, your first fiduciary responsibility as the listing agent is towards your seller. And so if you get a buyer from Zillow or off the street that comes in and says, "Hey, I want you to represent me," and you're the buyer, uh, uh, um, then you're gonna work with them. But again, your allegiance was first there, and so it's gonna naturally be a little bit more slanted on their side.
Abs- Absolutely. As a manager, that's one of the hardest things that I deal with agents that are representing both parties, the seller and the buyer, and they'll come to me and they'll say, "Well, contractually, we need to do whatever it is. We need to do this right now." But the seller, and so they're reluctant to do something that contractually protects their buyer that needs to be done, or conversely protects the seller that needs to be done, because then they're possibly going to lose the deal. But you have to, when you're dealing, that's part of it. You have to be laser focused on being the seller. So I'm the seller agent now, and then you have to turn that side of your brain off and go to the buyer. And like you said, very difficult to do for
Right.
almost everybody.
Right.
It's a hard thing. So that's, from in my opinion, I think anybody who's buying a house should have some representation for themselves. That would be how I would buy my house. I would never, I wouldn't say never, but I don't think I would ever buy a house that I wasn't represented. I didn't have my own representation on, and I would not necessarily use the listing agent. I would want my own representation. So
Well, and guess what's going to happen too, which is okay. So let's take this template of, all right, well, now as the seller, I am going to just offer you 2.5% to sell my home. And if you get a buyer that comes to you from Zillow, fine, you're going to go ahead and represent them because I'm not paying for other brokers, other buyers agents to bring their clients here. So it's all going to be on you, and you're getting 2.5%. And now you're going to have the really intricate dance of representing me in my best interests while you're also representing them and taking on double liability, because now I could end up going, hey, you cheated me and you were more on their side, and the buyer could do the same thing and go, hey, you were more on side with the seller and you didn't, you kind of cheated me, and so now you're opening yourself up to twice the liability. So what you think, listing agents that are taking on buyers are just going to do it for 2.5%? Probably
you know,
not.
some of them may, just as part of the deal, or some nominal fee. I think that's a mistake, frankly. I don't think, I know that's a mistake. I don't even
Right.
have to think of it. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
mistake. It's right. You're not doing a service. Definitely not doing a service to the buyer agent. You possibly doing a disservice to your seller as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah, that will happen. And so people want the representation that they want. The biggest part is it's not an everyday occurrence, and so a lot of people, they get advice from family members who've bought one house in their life,
right.
right? And 20 years ago, or maybe 30 years ago, and so again, they don't know what they don't know, and maybe they had a great experience buying the house. So I would say that's almost the worst kind, because they're saying, "Oh yeah, it's
It's
so
a
easy."
breeze. So
Yeah,
easy.
this stuff
Piece of
you don't
cake.
need that. You don't need a representative. Yeah, they'll give you the paperwork and you just look at it and everything's good. Yeah, as we both know, there's never a problem until there's a problem, and when there's a
Right.
problem in real estate, it's big.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, well, the way that I interpret the whole thing, the whole lawsuit, is that it's really, I know that it's about collusion to some degree, and it's about the transparency and whatnot. But really, it's about what most things are about, which is money. And sellers are going, hey, too much money, man. 5, 6%, and guess what? Like, they told me what the commission was, and it was set. And you're like, no, it wasn't, but it was a negotiation. Oh well, I didn't know that. Well, again, transparency, yada yada yada. Hey, you guys are making too much money, and we kind of brushed on this earlier, but let's talk about I mean, look, we're in California. Home prices, I mean, it's very normal for a home to be $1 million. It's not abnormal.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about 5% of $1 million, two and a half, two and a half, that's 25K, 25K. Well, that's a ton of money. That's a big commission check. Isn't that too much, Chip?
You're asking the wrong person. No, I don't think it's too much. If I'll say if you have a professional agent. If you have an agent that is knows what they're doing and that is looking out for your best interest, no. Because again, we're not getting paid for just that deal. We're getting paid for all of the things that we know that through our career and all of the help that our company gives us, management to back us up, and all of the things, the possible things that could go wrong, which Jonathan, on every deal, something always happens. It doesn't matter. The deal could be perfect. Something always happens. It's inevitable that something's going to go wrong, and so that's leaves us to deal with it. And so when people say, "Oh, to help negotiate," oh, you just negotiate the price. No, negotiating the price is the first negotiation.
Right.
Negotiating repairs, negotiating things that crop up in mid deal are others. The appraisal is a negotiation. We have to negotiate with their appraiser to make sure we get the appraisal. So there's there's always if there's a loan involved, there's three negotiations in every deal, minimum, and usually more than that because you're negotiating small things all the time, which we don't think of as a negotiation because we do it all the time, but
Right.
it's a negotiation. The whole thing is a negotiation,
Right.
right? That's how you handle it. So, yeah. So if you're looking at it as like these lawsuits are looking at it and going, oh my gosh, these realtors are making way too much money, and then the sellers step back and say that lawyer's right. These guys are making way too much money off of me, but it's not just again for that deal. I know I keep saying that, but it's so true. Because of if we were getting a salary now, if you talk about regulation and they want to do some regulation, which I don't even know how they would do, how would they pay? How would they pay us for the hours that we work on? It'd be that I think the cost actually would be more, right? I mean,
Right.
I don't some deals, right? Some deals, the craziest deal I ever had, first time home buyer. She looked at one property and that was the property she wanted to buy. I had to force her to look at two others, and she still went back to that. That's that's never. I've only done that one time.
So
Most people just inherently want to look at properties and take their time and go over things and have you be the expert that knows that. So it just it's just so much more than okay, I'm going to buy this property and okay, it's $1 million, so I got to put $30,000 in deposit, or it's not as mechanical as it looks after the fact.
right.
During the deal, it's extremely emotional for our clients, both sides, seller and buyer. And so we have to not only we have to be an expert negotiator for our clients, but also for ourselves and with our clients to help them see through some of their emotions and get them past something that's holding them back to
Right.
actually get into a property that they really want to, but
Right.
they're going to hold themselves back for sometimes really minor things, but that's all part of the deal. And so those things aren't seen, and nobody speaks about any of that information. And so that's really the why we get paid what we get paid. It's truly a profession.
Well, and also let's also make it very simple too. So $25,000 on $1 million home, if you're getting 2.5% on either side. Well, you're taking that and you're cutting it because you've got to pay your brokerage. And that brokerage needs to survive, so it needs to get paid too, right? And there are brick and mortar, and even if there's not, there's in insurance. I mean, there are just a ton of different things that the brokerage is taking on, and so they naturally have to take their cut. And so, boom, your 25K is already going down more. And then this is not taking into consideration all of the legwork. I mean, gas and time spent researching and the entire transaction process. I mean, you're talking about I, hours upon hours upon hours of work, not to mention all of the time it took for you to get to this point. So there's that you have to factor in as well. And then the last thing that you're talking about is we're not closing deals every day. Deals take a long time, and there's Selling Sunset, and we all watch that TV show, and they make it look like it's super easy. Like, hey, I want to buy the home. It's $7 million, and they even put the commission on what it is. That commission's $250,000, and you're like, holy mackerel! Like they just made 250K for making a phone call. So again, the presentation of that seems one way, but you can go for months and months and months without a deal. And so all of a sudden, that 25,000, when you spread that out over time of calling and marketing and door knocking and keeping up with clients and showing properties and doing all of those things that you need, most realtors, I mean, look at the statistics. Most realtors are not making enough to just be realtors. They have to go and get side jobs, or they're bouncing out of the industry. It's not like it's this like fortune to be had. And of course, that's offset by some really big agents that have developed a huge book of business over 20, 30 years. And those people do exist, and they're making really good money, as well they should, because of the time spent doing it. But that's like, I mean,
Well,
there's a huge comparison there.
yeah, well, and you forgot one of the biggest expenses that everybody has to pay, and that's income taxes. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do to get away from that. So that's a
Right.
huge, yeah. So that 25,000 that looks so big, when you get down to the end of it, I mean, it really goes down to a meager thing. And like you say, if you're closing a deal every three or 4 months, yeah, that's kind of tough. So now,
Right.
yeah. So how would you? I don't even know how you'd regulate. What the number should be. I don't how do you do it? Because we do get deals where it happens really quickly and everybody's on board and everything is good. So how do you go into it? You don't know what's going to happen until at the end. So how do you go into it and say, okay, well, we'll only charge you 1% because this deal is going to be easy. Where the other one that's hard, we actually should probably forget about 2.5%. Probably should be charged 10%. I mean, hate to have this go out to clients, but I mean, it's just some of the transactions get really, really down into the weeds, and you're really trying to crawl and scrape to get people together and to do what's best actually in their best interest. It just doesn't seem that way in that point. So how do you charge that up front? I don't know. That's why we have a commission based system,
Right.
because we're taking a risk when we go in.
Right.
We're taking on a listing with actually not getting paid, and you're taking on a buyer and you're
Right.
not getting paid unless the deal closes. So
I've
it's a
had
risk for
listings
me.
that didn't sell, and I've had buyers that didn't buy.
Yeah.
I've had buyers that moved off, and so again, you're talking about putting in work that ends up never being compensated, and there's no part of us that's allowed to go after them and go, "Hey, you need to pay me something. I did all of this work for you, and you didn't do anything. I put
Right.
all this money into selling your home, and you never reduced the price to a realistic number to actually sell the home."
Right. Yeah. So if you want to like have upfront fees, well, then we can talk about some type of maybe a regulation, because at least you're going to get paid something. But the way our industry is now, and I don't see it changing to have that regulation. I don't think that that's consumer friendly either. It's not realtor friendly, but it's not. It's definitely not consumer friendly. So I think things are going to change in the way commissions are done. Definitely in the way they're explained,
Right.
which personally I think is a good thing. I
Right.
think I think more transparency is good, and as agents, as realtors, we need to be able to explain why we're getting paid what we're getting paid and how it's being done, so everybody knows. It should not be a secret. It definitely should
Well,
not be a secret.
why the heck do you think I'm having you on to talk about all of this? This is our
Well, and
way of
that's why
explaining to the
that's
world, right? The real estate of things.
right. Well, that's why we're talking about it, right? And so that is the way it should be. It's too bad that it stayed the way that it is for so long, without it morphing into something more. I truly don't think. I know. I already know. We don't collude with anybody. I mean, we don't call up the other brokerage and say, okay, well, we're going to charge 5% for this property. Let's all keep it there. That's not the way it works. I
Right.
mean, there are agents out there that will do the same. Will list his house for the same house that I'm going to list for 2%, and I'm going to list it for 5. But like you said, there's discount brokers and there's levels of service and there's things that they're going to do and there's things that I'm going to do, and they're totally different. So it just depends on what you're looking for as to what commission you negotiate for yourself and with the agent that you're working with, and it is truly a collaboration. So at some point, when you're a seller or a buyer, you want your representative to get paid. I mean, if they're not incentivized to help you to find a property, that's bad for you. It's just inherently bad. You want them to be incentivized to get the best deal for you that they can, uh, so that you get a great deal and they protect you. That's the other
Right.
thing. Transfer of liability for both buyers and sellers is huge. That's a big part of what we do.
Right.
We take on the risk because we're the professional. It's like going to a lawyer or a doctor. They take the risk away from you. They're giving you advice. Now, if you don't follow the advice, that's a different question, a different story. But we're giving you advice and saying this is how it works, and this is how the contracts work. This is how it goes. And so if you that's what you want, then you want your to pay your representative, a good salary. Now, again, it's negotiable, and so what is enough for you and your representative? It's totally between you two. So,
Right.
and I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Because frankly, if a real estate agent can't negotiate their fees for themselves, I'm not sure I want them to negotiate the purchase price or the sale of my house, because negotiation is a big part of what we do for our clients. So
That's right. Yep.
yeah.
Well said. I mean, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and we're actually almost getting to an hour. We're at 51 minutes. So I'm gonna shortchange the, what you think is going on with the market. You can just give me like a quick little, where we heading in 2024. We're at the beginning right now. Are things gonna be okay? Are we in for a crash? What's gonna happen? Give me 20
Yeah,
seconds.
I don't. Yeah. Our real estate market's not going to crash. There's not enough homes for sale currently, for many reasons. Not enough building regulation. You name it. There's a ton of reasons. But bottom line is not enough homes for sale. So that keeps the prices up, and people still are coming to California. Everybody thinks nobody's coming to California. Everybody's leaving. Well, we don't have a problem selling houses. So when people leave, other people come. As a matter of fact, there's right now, currently, there's probably it's at least 2 to 1, 3 to 1, depending on the house, maybe even 4 and 5 to 1 purchase in the house. So I don't see that changing. I don't think the prices are going to go up as like they did. I don't think they're going down. At best, they're going to slide. And if the interest rate drops, then the prices are going to go back up because there's going to be more competition for the limited supply that we have. So as long as we have a limited supply, you're as a consumer, you're going to pay for the price for the house because it's all supply and demand. It
Right.
has nothing to do. Frankly, it has nothing to do with anything else. It's supply and demand.
Right. Yep. 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 Um, I keep asking this question, and I love these little stories. Do you have any crazy transactions that you want to talk about?
We kind of talked about this. It's interesting when we deal with both buyers and sellers, and there's always remorse. There's seller's remorse. There's buyer's remorse when you get into a deal. Now, when you're a buyer and you get into a deal and you have buyer's remorse, or you get into it and just something happens and you say, well, this is not going to work for me. You have many outs to
Right.
not purchase the property because of contingencies. As a seller, you technically have none. I mean, literally, the minute you have agreed to that contract and it's communicated to the other party, and you cannot unilaterally cancel that contract. You can't personally cancel that without the buyer doing something that's against the contract.
Right.
So the hardest thing to deal with as a seller, sometimes it's legitimate where they thought they had a job. So this is all. So okay, let me back. This is all things that we as agents can help our clients with. If we don't get the information from our clients, and that's on us too. If we don't ask the right questions, if somebody is thinking they're going to get a job and say, okay, I got to sell my house and I got to be out in 30 days. Well, what if you don't get that job? Right. So there are ways to protect sellers, but bottom line, the craziest deal I've ever been involved in revolved around seller's remorse. And he got into the deal, and literally it was, what was it? It was 48 hours after they signed the deal. He thought he had another house purchased, and his agent told him, listen, this is If you don't get that house, then you still have to sell this house. We can protect you. We can put a home of choice to purchase another home. We can protect you, but it's possible then that it was a cash buyer. The cash buyer may not stay in it. He said nope. He says, you know what, I'll sell the house, right? And he's all gung ho on the other house. Get in the deal. Other house falls through. He did not get it, and he says, okay, well, cancel. Now I don't want to sell the house. Cancel the deal. And we're going, okay, well, we can't. Here, the only way we can cancel this deal is if the buyer doesn't perform in some fashion. They don't meet one of their deadlines. They don't. And so he actually was extremely mad, mostly transferred over to me, but with the agent and with our company, because we were not helping him get out of the deal. And so we had to, what one of my job was to explain to him, listen, we don't get people out of deals. We sell houses. And so we help you. I can explain the rules to you and explain what they are. But if you want to get out of the deal and legally, you need to contact an attorney, because frankly, the way the contract reads is the seller has basically no outs unless the buyer doesn't perform. And in this case, it was really a hard deal. I mean, it was heartbreaking in one sense that the buyer you know probably should have just walked away and found another house, but didn't. And they would have, so we had to explain to our guy, and they're definitely talked to attorneys. They would have lost a loss. He would have ended up selling his house, and it would have
Right.
cost him a ton of money,
Right.
because the contract is valid. And so it would have gone to the courts or arbitration, and it would have been what's called specific performance. And the specific performance in this case is you have to sell your house for that deal, and then you end up paying all your court costs and the other guy's court costs.
Right.
So anyways, we actually ended up closing that deal, but it was 30 days, frankly, of pure hell,
Oh,
for
wow.
me and for the selling agent. We had to go to every single thing that the buyer was going at. Myself and the other agent and the other manager, we all went because we didn't want there to be any issues, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle. It was hard. Again, it was heartbreaking on so many different levels, but that's part of our job as well.
What happened to the seller after the home sold?
So he actually did end up completing the deal and
Yeah.
moved out. And he actually had, I think, which was another point of contention. I think they negotiated that he got to stay in the house, like 21 days after the
Uh-huh.
sale, at no cost.
Yeah.
And the buyer, as we're going through, the buyer says, "Hey, I don't want to do that anymore." And I was like, "Man, that's part of the deal." So yeah, now your choice is don't buy the house,
Right.
or buy the house and he gets to stay there for that number of days. So the
Yeah.
buyers were concerned that the seller was going to damage the house in any way. And it's like, yeah, it's possible he can. We can't have an armed guard there and hold his hand,
Right.
and conversely, we can't hold his hand and say, okay, you have to sell this house, you have to sign this paperwork. If he didn't sign the paperwork, it would have been court. So
Right.
and so all of those remedies, it all ends up at, the answer to all those questions is court, if nobody follows through. So it worked out in a sense. The seller did sell, he did move out. um,
The end of the story is he moved to Hawaii and had a beautiful life and vacationed on the beach for the rest of his days, and is still living
yes,
there to
sure.
this day,
Yeah.
surfing and fishing and doing all that stuff. So it all worked out for the best, right?
Yeah. Oh, you have to have a happy ending, Jonathan. Well, it
Yes,
did. The
please.
buyers got their house. The buyers are happy. Their boys are happy. The house is gorgeous. It's an awesome house. So they did great.
And the guy went and then lived in a cave for the rest of his life. Yeah.
He's fine. It just happens.
Well, and we'll talk about this. You mentioned home of choice contingency, and we'll talk about that on another day. But there are protections, right? And he waived that protection.
Yep.
That's
Yes.
crazy.
Knowingly, and
Yeah.
then after one of the things with real estate contracts, everybody thinks, oh, it's just real estate. We can do what
Right.
we want.
Right.
It is a legal binding contract. You can't do what you want. It says what it says. And so, yeah, he just figured, oh, yeah, well, if we don't get that house, then, it's fine. I'll just get out of it. I just won't sell the house. They can't make me move. Well, literally, he found out that they could. So
Wow.
it's unfortunate. The buyer's brother is a prominent real estate attorney. So
Oh, wow. Oh.
they knew, exactly what was going on. They removed their contingencies well before they needed to. There were no, yeah, there was just
They
absolutely
performed
nothing.
beautifully, the buyers
Yeah,
did.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, and they even said, listen, if the guy, because he was supposed to put in like fire smoke detectors and carbons, and we were having a hard time doing that. Actually, the other agent ended up doing it because as you know, the appraiser has to have that, so they had to go in
right,
and, as we were talking, they were putting them up as the appraiser was going through and taking pictures of them. So just so that they could get the house appraised and closed. Otherwise, it would have been a problem. So yeah. So again, there are protections that a seller can have, but if you don't avail yourself of those or you waive them, then that they're gone. Yeah, a seller can't, like I said, cannot cancel the house without the buyer doing something against the contract.
right.
So,
Yep,
yep,
yep, which is why you need representation.
yep.
Chip, thank you so much for an amazing conversation. I know
Like,
we didn't get to
Jonathan,
every
I'm shocked that this was an hour already. I I love talking to you. It was fun. You can tell that you're highly involved in what you do. So there's a great conversation. Love to talk to you again. So thank you. I didn't mean to break in, but thank you.
No, thank you for coming on and going through this entire thing. It's, there's a whole lot. It's really dense, and to kind of sift through it, there's no one better than you. You understand this stuff so well. Anytime I ever have a question about anything, I come to you, and 99% of the time you have the answer. And when you don't, in that 1%, you know where to direct me to go and find that answer. So you're a wealth of knowledge and wisdom and understanding and experience, and I'm super grateful to have you as my branch manager here. And I think this was a fantastic conversation. I can't wait for everyone to go and listen to it. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good day.
All right.